Bagi Sutan Syahrir, politik itu adalah rasa cinta kepada manusia dan memperjuangkan manusia. Makanya dia lebih dikenal sebagai humanis besar sebenarnya.
Greetings to all viewers. On today's video, we will uncover the story of one of Indonesia's forefathers during World War II whose set of mind surpassed his own generation, Sutan Syahrir. I will limit this talk only until his prominent role during Indonesia's independence and his contribution as the Minister of Foreign Affairs until approximately the year of 1947. This means that any segment outside the aforementioned time period will not be included in this video. The timeline throughout Sutan Syahrir's life will be presented on the bottom left of the screen. So, without further ado, let's begin. Sutan Syahrir's beginnings was far more privileged than most locals. Born in Padang Panjang, West Sumatra on March 5, 1909, he came from a rather upper-class family. Here on this family portrait, Sutan Syahrir is the boy's second from the left. His father has a title of Maharaja Sutan, based from his work as a chief prosecutor on the local city, and it was very prestigious at the time. You see, as the opposite side of the story, not all locals can have the ability to live in such grand house. So Sutan Syahrir was very lucky to be blessed with the opportunity to obtain education, something that most locals could only dream about. Other reason of his humble beginnings was that the locals in Gadang, the city he grew up with, was given a chance by the Dutch government to attend Dutch-owned schools right after the Padri War. Syahrir completed all primary and secondary schools, and right after he graduated Algemene Middelbare School, he decided to study law in Gemeente Universiteit van Amsterdam. Yes, he studied abroad. And during the course of his studies, he befriended Salomon Tas, who was at the time the president of the Social Democratic Students Club in Leiden University. He was enamored by this leftist ideology. Why? Because at the time, those community in the Netherlands supported the nationalists in Indonesia on the cause of liberating Indonesia from its colonizers. There, he worked in the Sekretariat Federasi Buruh Transportasi Internasional, and he was also the member of Perhimpunan Indonesia under Muhammad Hatta. It was an organization of students abroad. And Muhammad Hatta, speaking of Muhammad Hatta, he and Sutan Syahrir were primary examples of leaders who have different mindset compared to Sukarno. Why? Because both have different educational backgrounds of studying abroad, unlike Sukarno. And then sometimes later, Muhammad Hatta and Sutan Syahrir excluded themselves from Perhimpunan Indonesia because it was said to be infiltrated by communist beliefs, something that neither figures were aligned to. In 1931, Sutan Syahrir returned to Indonesia, and he decided along with Muhammad Hatta to dive into the political world right after the disbandment of the National Party of Indonesia after their leader Sukarno was captured for political reasons. And then on June 26, 1932, he was chosen as the general leader of the party. Of course, with great power comes great responsibility. Muhammad Hatta and Syahrir were captured by the Dutch government, and then they were thrown away to Bovendigul, Papua to live in exile. It was January 23, 1935. They both spent around a year there, and then they were moved to Bananera, Maluku to live in yet another exile. In Bananera, they taught some local youths and also have met several national figures there. It was Mr. Iwa Kusuma Sumantri and Dr. Cipto Mangunkusumo. Hatta and Syahrir returned to Java on February 3, 1942 after 7 years of exile. This time, the Japanese army has invaded Indonesia. And then, during his exile, Sutan Syahrir's hatred, he began to antagonize the fascist beliefs that was happening in Nazi Germany, Italy, and also Imperial Japan. And then, sometime later, he agreed with Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta to not cooperate with the Japanese officials. So, this is the beginning of Sutan Syahrir's underground movement. This is the grand question. what was Sutan Syahrir's role during the independence of Indonesia? Well, as one of the figures behind the underground movement, he and his men could obtain any sort of information regarding the World War from radios and other comrades. He told this to his biography writer Cindy Adams. And Japan wasn't an anarchic state. From Harry Truman's ultimatum of dropping bombs until its tragic effect that led millions of people committing suicide in Okinawa, this proves that Indonesians are even more eager to welcome their liberty. Sukarno, Hatta, and Rajiman Wadudiningrat ventured out to Saigon to hear updates from General Hisaichi Terauchi. Syahrir stayed put. And when they came back on August 14, 1945, they stated that soon Indonesia will have its independence based on the date that Japanese had decided. Syahrir, however, viewed this as a fallacy, this planned independence. Why? Because it is unjust to trust the Japanese even though they are lost. They have lost. Why? Because this could end fatally to the Indonesian army if the Japanese had kept going. Therefore, he demanded Sukarno to begin the proclamation as soon as possible. If not, he and his underground men will take the role instead. Well, this didn't end well because Sukarno said that only PPK officials had the right to declare the proclamation. And then he ordered his men to take Sukarno and Muhammad Hatta to a secluded area in Rengas Dengklok. The rest is history. November 1945, Sutan Syahrir was chosen as one of the four members of Indonesia's first parliamentary cabinet. He was also chosen as the Prime Minister and the Minister of Foreign Affairs. His diplomatic skills was very skillful with India, the Netherlands, and so many other nations. But misconceptions of him trying to sell out Indonesia to the Netherlands was also present during these times. This led to his kidnapping in Solo in the year of 1946. In 1947, he was no longer the Prime Minister. In the year of 1948, he formed his own leftist organization named the Socialist Party of Indonesia, rivaling the Communist Party of Indonesia. But unfortunately, it was disbanded by Sukarno in the year of 1960. Speaking of Sukarno, political tensions between him and Sutan Syahrir grew, and this led to his imprisonment. And sick and powerless, Sutan Syahrir died in Swiss on April 9, 1966. Throughout his life, he has dealt with despair, virtue, humanity. And until his end behind bars, this is the last statement he wrote from Cipinang prison. Und setzt ihr nicht das Leben ein, nie wird euch das Leben gewonnen sein. Which means lives that are not at stake will not be gained. This is Sutan Syahrir.